It's the Awake Space with Laurie Rivers, and I want to remind you when one of us does better, we all do better. And that is the attitude I want you to keep as we move through this week's Cosmic Tsunami, because that new moon in Aquarius packs a wallop in the outer world and in the inner world. We can push through walls, we can move through obstacles, we can clear our thinking, and it really is going to prove what Einstein said, which is the same thinking that caused the problem cannot arrive at the solution. We got to be agile with our thinking. This new moon in Aquarius really is a cosmic tsunami. So grab your surfboards because we're going to surf the cosmic tide together. And you might have noticed I have a little more energy in my voice, and that is because I'm no longer poisoning myself. We'll talk about that and more this week of February 16th as we move through another time in 2026. I tell you guys, end of April, that things change. I don't know for how, but it changes. The energy changes up. Until then, we just got to hang on to our surfboards. So grab your tea, grab your coffee, grab your Red Bull, get your H2O or your matcha. I almost forgot the matcha. And we are going to do this together, whether we're going to work, taking a hot girl, hot guy walk, whether we're recovering from surgery, medium Matilda, or if we are just driving along the highway. All right, let's get moving.
I don't think it's it this month, but you can start getting your hopes up.
That's right. I poisoned myself. I did. And I even knew better. It wasn't intentional. I just wasn't using my noodle. I've wondered why I've been so sick because I have a really robust immune system. It is rare for me to get sick. I mean, if you look at my astrology chart, you're going to be like, oh, wow, this chick has survived some stuff, like stuff. Like they told my mom to expect me to die when I was like 11 days old. And I was like, bet. And I survived the odds. They only gave me a 20% chance of survival. One of the titles I've thought about a autobiography would be The 20% Chance Kid. I am very robust. So why was I so sick? I felt like I couldn't breathe. I was like, man, do I have pneumonia? What's going on? No, it was an air freshener. And a lot of the synthetic air fresheners and even natural ones, you have to be careful regardless of whether something is a natural essential oil or a synthetic fragrance. They have neurotoxins in them. And as you know, or may not, I moved in with my parents about a year and a half ago because they're elderly and they don't need a ton of help, but they also live in a really hard to get to place. We'd had a couple of health scares. And I was like, you know what? I'm coming in like the UN and I'm going to be an observer. Okay. They don't need a lot of help. I carry stuff for them. You know, when they come back from a Costco trip, I unload the car or I help my mom carry her totes of decorations for every single holiday. She decorates everything. She's wild with that. But anywho, I rarely get sick. Rarely. And I caught that cold that's been going around everywhere. And I think I caught it because back in December, I was enchanted by this oil diffuser. And I'm not going to mention the name brand because it wouldn't matter with me. I know I'm sensitive to chemicals. If you have a prominent Neptune in your chart, especially if it's in the first or sixth house, and it makes an easy aspect like a sextile or a trine to your sun, you might be very sensitive to chemicals. It's not the only marker, but I have that. I have Neptune in my first house and it's trine my sun and my Mercury, and I have always been very, very sensitive to chemicals of all kinds, natural or synthetic. I was going great guns. End of December, beginning of January, I was hyper focused. I got so much work done. Then I got sick at the end of January and flattened, and my brain would not come online, which is really scary when your brain is the thing you really rely on. I know, I'm not saying other people, well, come on, we've all been on TikTok. We know not everybody engages their brain, but YouTube's worse, you know. And except those of you who have come over to follow me from TikTok since you left it, thank you for commenting on my YouTube channel because it's feral over there. But anyway, I figured it out. Saturn popped into Aries. Okay, so let me back it up. I had transit Neptune in Pisces and transit Saturn in Pisces in a trine with my Sun and my Mercury. You'd be like, oh, that's great, Laurie. Trines are good. Okay, astrology crew members, what have I said about trines? They're not always good news. Just like squares aren't always bad news. That's why I don't say malefic and benefic when we talk about aspects in astrology. I say there's supportive and creative. Okay, supportive are the positive, what we would think of as positive, and the creative are what most people would consider negative. Because in 30 years of experience, more than one time a trine has done me dirty, and more than one time a square has been really productive. And so I'm like, I don't know. So Saturn being in a trine in my Mercury was obviously hell bent on poisoning me. It's a joke. It's a joke. I'm not really blaming Saturn. However, it was showing I wasn't really thinking. You know, I was just kind of doing my thing. I wasn't using my normal logic. And I got enchanted by this diffusing thing in December, plugged it in, and it didn't work right away, which probably was my guides saying, you dumbass, get it out of the wall. And anyway, it's funny now. But really, for the last month, I have felt really unwell. And worst of all, it's like I couldn't concentrate. And those of you who know me, if you're new, welcome to your first episode with me. But if you are somebody who's been on this ride with me for the last, 5 years, 6 years, then I have incredible focus. So for me to lose it is weird. And I was like, but it's not COVID, and I'm like, if I have post-COVID syndrome, I'm going to be pissed. I was like, no. So the last time we went up to get our mani-pedis in Cody, because I'm in Wyoming and I live far away from anything convenient, I grabbed a bunch of vitamin C. I was like, I really feel this is vitamins. I'm going to just chug vitamin C. And I did. And I did that the day Saturn moved into Aries. And then the next day, I woke up and I smelled the air freshener and went, oh my God, that's it. I'm allergic to that. I'm sensitive to these things. So I unplugged it, almost threw it out the window, and opened my window. And the window had played a role about a week and a half ago because this was getting worse. I've been trying to get Laurie's test lab running. I've been trying to get things recorded, and I've been lethargic. My color's been off. It's been weird. And I'm like, it was like dementia, like it was crazy. It's not like I couldn't remember things, but I couldn't connect dots, which is really crazy. And yes, if you're watching the video, yes, I have hurt my hand also. So too much clicking with my thumb. So I've got a splint on. So about a week and a half ago, we had a really bad windstorm because it's Wyoming, and my window popped, and I put it back in, and it's not a bad window. It's just my dad installed it. Okay. It's a thing. It's a whole thing. We won't go into it. He's 80. We won't discuss it. It's a nice room and it's a nice house. If you're a patron, you've seen it when I do lives, when I cook. But anyway, I had to pop the window back in. and I didn't open it because I didn't want it to do its thing again. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's really loud and it's startling. And so, anywho, I propped it open one night and then I closed it and I realized I've been in this enclosed space with with the fumes and it's been poisoning me. So I feel better today because I had my window open overnight. I just figured this out like on Saturday. Happy Valentine's Day, Laurie. So to all my patrons, thank you for being patient with me. I've tried to get as much done as I've been able to do. But oh my Lord. So yeah, that grand trine that was happening, that Saturn was trining my Sun and Mercury and also my Neptune, didn't kill me. That was the good news. But my brain is finally online. Okay. Finally online. Oh my God. So hopefully we get back on production schedule because I'm behind on recording Healing the Money Wound, the framework for rebuilding confidence, value, and wealth, and understanding what wealth is to us individually, explaining what the money wound is, how to build that stability from the inside out. I will be getting that recorded. I'm still working on the work and then the mini course for healing the money wound. The PDFs are all done, all that fun stuff. The quiz works. I just have to finish the last little bits. And I got some good news because I'm using this platform called Ivory and it's built on top of WordPress. It's great. The people who are behind it are amazing. But it's a little complex. And I just found out they've got VAs in the community that know it inside out. And I'm like, oh, come to mama and help me out because you can't do it all. You can't do it all. And that's something we need to talk about with the Aquarius New Moon. So often we think with technology we can do a lot more than we should be doing, and we need to be focusing on the things that we're really, really good at, and understanding the things we're really, really good at is important. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the new moon, talk about how not to poison yourself, and oh Lord, I cannot even begin to express how much better I feel already. And I think as I go through this week, my energy is back. I'm a little energizer bunny. So thank you for putting up with me as we've gone through the last few weeks, because I know my energy's been low and my brain has been cooked. So lots of good stuff up on the horizon. If you are a Awake Space magazine subscriber, the audio's coming out this week. So yay! I've got a bunch of articles, including the Mercury Retrograde Survival Guide, where once again, I explain to you there is no such thing as a pre-shadow. It's not. That's internet pop astrology BS. It's a pre-retrograde. And that's when the planet is slowing down. But it is not what people make it out to be. And even the shadow isn't. It's not some dark, nefarious shadow person coming out to get you. It literally means just covering old ground. That's it. That is all that means. So that article and many more will be coming out for magazine subscribers, and that's the $15 level and up. If you are in the astrology crew, or what was the mystery school, Laurie's Test Lab is there. There's a post in the Patreon with the link to join. My daughter Sarah and I will be going live at some point this week in there, testing that feature out. And then we'll also be doing the hot seat on the 24th of February, which should be pretty cool. Very excited about that. That's where I'm going to host that one and support up to maybe 5 people, 4 or 5 people. But and you just bring your questions. And it's not about astrology though. Astrology, people get overthinking in their heads. Okay. This is real world strategy, because if I just speak the astrology to you, and you don't have the ability to translate that into everyday language. It's just intellectualized. And that's why I've done a lot of translation of what I've learned with astrology as my laboratory. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about getting you some real world applicable results. It doesn't mean we're not doing astrology, but that's happening in the Patreon, not in Laurie's test lab. Alrighty, let's get moving. Let's talk about the cosmic tsunami that we call the Aquarius New Moon this week.
I don't think it's it this month, but you can start getting your hopes up.
So the Aquarius New Moon, it packs a wallop. It's like a giant iceberg crashing into the ocean. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't hear about one. Okay, there could be an earthquake in Antarctica. There could be something that happens that knocks a big old chunk of ice into the ocean. And that's because we have the new moon in Aquarius at around 28 degrees right before it forms new. When it's in the waning gibbous phase, it's making a hard square with Uranus and Taurus. And that's very earth-shaking. Normally new moons aren't so much a volatile thing. You know, the new moons tend to be quieter energy. Full moons tend to be more dramatic. New moons are where we plant our seeds. The full moon is that corresponds with the new moon is where we harvest those. Okay. So on a mundane level, I expect a whole bunch of stuff to fall apart, whether it's technical, like cell towers falling down, big windstorms that knock power lines down. We could see issues with power grids. And remember, there's more than one grid unless you live in Texas and then they've got their power all messed up. But in general, there's lots of little grids that sync up. The United States does not have a singular grid. That would be like the dumbest thing ever. So, and in fact, electricity doesn't even work that way. So, but I'm looking at Northern Europe, Western Europe as well. And Australia could see some lightning strikes that start some pretty serious wildfires. So keep your eye out on the wind and lightning. East Africa as well. East moving down into sub-Saharan Africa could see some pretty big weather. Northwest Africa could see more rain blow in. Which there have been a lot of flooding in Morocco. I know. But on a personal level, you have a great day. She laughs. And all the listeners are like, oh, shit, she's laughing. But really, guys, you really can. Now, you want to set your intentions. You want to set your intentions with an eye to change. Okay. Hanging on to the past or your illusions about how the world is supposed to work is not going to do you any good. Understand me. I see a lot of people crashing out right now because there's this whole awakening happening, basically, where people are like, oh my God, all these bad things happen in the world and that shouldn't be, and they should be held accountable. And I'm jaded. I've lived through a lot. I've seen a lot. I've had a lot of things happen to me that I had zero control over. I have survived a lot, and I happen to know justice is not always served with eggs and toast, okay? Justice does not always come packaged the way we want to see it. Heads don't always roll, and it's usually the people who deserve less accountability who get the most accountability thrown at them. But we have Saturn in Aries, and it's all about accountability. But we have to be accountable to ourselves as well. Okay. So I'm going to say, like, when it comes to the Epstein files, if you are not professionally trained to go through vast amounts of disturbing material, limit your exposure. Okay. This idea that the world was ever cozy and kind is an illusion. You know, physical life is gritty. Like, we deal with resistance every day just by gravity being here, right? But gravity is also what keeps us on the planet. there's always mixed energy. And it's learning how to surf the cosmic tide that makes it bearable. Take it from somebody who has lived through a lot. Our nervous systems are really, really, really sensitive right now. Even with Mercury and Venus and Pisces, we still have quite a bit of Aquarius happening. Okay, especially we still have Mars in Aquarius, and Mars is moving into that square with Uranus and Taurus. We are all very sensitive, and we need to treat ourselves as very delicate beings. Our nervous systems, as I can testify, are really truly sensitive. And by overloading ourselves, we're not doing anybody any favors, whether it's through environmental toxins or it's through emotional toxins. Because remember, emotions are contagious. Emotions are contagious. Stanford University proved that out. Emotional contagion is real. So as they're whipping people up into fight and flight, as they're whipping you up into being ultimately disillusioned, you're robbing yourself of your agency. And with Saturn in Aries now, conjunct Neptune in Aries, because it's minutes apart. It doesn't have to be perfected to be a conjunction. It is time to build a new reality forward for ourselves, accepting what is and just saying, yes, that exists. I don't have to like it. I don't have to condone it. I can know that it is. Okay. And I can look at what is my reality. In fact, that's what the work is all about. The work by Laurie Rivers, the 12 modules that are coming out in the test lab. It is helping you actually reset your nervous system. And it's exactly what I created for myself to heal from very complex post-traumatic stress disorder. You know, it was a very severe diagnosis, and I got to 0 clinical markers. It was a long walk. One of my great concerns, and I'm going to keep going on how to use this energy, so hold with me. One of my great concerns is when psychiatrists and psychologists come out and say, you know, that early childhood abuse impacted your brain development, and it does. I'm not saying it doesn't. But it is a very cruel statement to make when so many people did suffer early childhood abuse, whether it was CSA or other forms of abuse. And we categorize which abuse is worse than others. Neglect and emotional abuse, honestly, was harder to heal than physical abuse. Okay. And SA. That SA and physical abuse was easier to heal from than neglect, psychological and emotional. Okay, because those aren't tangible. So they're harder to work with and they're insidious, right? But it doesn't mean you can't heal. And the way it's discussed really, really bothers me because that mindset, that idea really harmed me as a young person hearing that, like, you'll never heal. Like, that was the standard mantra in 1985 when I was 15. I hadn't even turned 16 yet. And that caused a lot of damage. That caused almost as much damage as the abuse itself. So as we move to this new moon on the 17th, and it's not going to be the whole day of the 17th, and I promise I'll give you the deets, okay? As we move towards that, I want you to remember our brains are very, very capable of healing, all right? And as much as trauma alters our brain and our neural pathways and our brain chemistry, so too does healing. And it's a process, and it's not something that's a one and done. There's no magic bullet. It takes a lot of work, and it's worth doing the work, I can tell you. Okay, there was very much a time in my life where I was going to do everything I could so I never had to reincarnate again. There was a time in my life where I just was hoping it would end, okay, because it hurt so much. And as I progressed in the healing journey and I started to embrace more of life, never forgetting the past, I've never been able to repress anything, partly because of how my own brain works. But it's severe as what I experienced was. I could never repress anything. It was all in technicolor in my head, which sucked. And it's never gone away. It's still there. But when you go through a healing process, you can observe things without personalizing it. You can look at your past like it's a movie. And it's a long process. Don't try it alone. Don't try it on your own. Make sure you have support. I bring this up because this new moon is packing a wallop. It is ripping apart the inauthentic parts of society that have been built on lies. It is destabilizing systems that are not sustainable, like that stock market. I'm sure it's going to see some crazy swings this week. If you're making your happiness about things having to be a certain way, it's going to be hard to find it, you know. If you can't find reasonable contentedness in your own present moment, it's going to be hard. This new moon is a lot like the Kool-Aid guy. You remember the old Kool-Aid commercials where the big Kool-Aid jug bursts through a wall? That's this new moon. It is forcing awareness. It is forcing awareness of that which is not sustainable. There's going to be a lot of things around climate change with that. There's a lot of things to do with the fabric of society, people that you held trust in. I've been telling you that the age of the celebrity is over. You know, you shouldn't edify somebody you don't know anyway. Just because they play a hero on screen and they've got a good PR team does not mean they're a good person. They might be very smart at choosing scripts. They might be very pleasant in their appearance. But that doesn't make them someone to worship, you know. Too many people are more concerned with what's happening at the Super Bowl than what's happening in their neighborhood. And Aquarius, that new moon, is blowing these things apart. It's a really good time to learn how to cultivate your critical thinking. It's a very good time to learn how to pause before reacting. And it's a great time to set your intentions about how you want to build your reality forward. It's very, very important. Now I'm going to do the house by house breakdown for my patrons. Okay. And you can see I've got my little Patreon sweatshirt on. This is a really cool deal that I got. I'm an ambassador for Patreon. And if you don't know what that is, it is a platform for creatives. There's game designers, there's musicians, photographers, podcasters, you name it. And it helps us fund our work in the world. A lot of us are very committed to staying independent. And as an ambassador, I get to test new things. So the Awake Space community has gotten to test a whole bunch of the new features that have rolled out. So thank you to patrons. We'll do patron shoutouts in a minute. But back to the new moon. This new moon, you want to set your intentions for forward growth. You want to set your intentions with an eye to your strengths. That's always, doesn't matter what sign. Okay. You want to set your intentions for the next, almost 6 months. It'll be from February 17th until July 29th when the full moon in Aquarius happens. You'll see some evidence almost right away. If you're in great alignment, when you set these intentions, in about 2 weeks, you'll see some fruition happen in that area. But the big harvest comes in at the end of July. It's always that way with new and full moons. It's not from the new moon to the full moon in a 2-week period, especially if you're trying to manifest something sizable. Okay. You have to know that it takes time. Some of it is us getting out of our own way, Like, you can't receive if you're constantly asking. I haven't talked about this in a long time, but especially with this new moon, if you're sitting there, universe, please, I'll be good, I'll be good, I'll be good, I'll be good. Your hands are closed. How do you catch a ball? How do you catch a windfall? How do you catch the fish being thrown at you? If you're like this, it's going to smack you in the head and bounce off. You set your intentions and then you open your hands to receive. All right. If you're shattered because of world news, if you're shattered because of events outside of your control, you also will have difficulty receiving because you're putting up like a force field. You can't see the good stuff. There is still good stuff in this world, and that's where we need to train our focus. It is a great time to set intentions around renovating our interior landscape. Notice I didn't say deconstruct. Deconstruction is part of the process. Renovation is the next step. Great time. And how could you do that? What would be some good statements to write down as you're setting your intentions? Well, one could be, I'm open to seeing success in new ways. I'm open to collaborating with people in innovative ways. I'm open to the right collaborators showing up. I'm open to opportunity to participate in community in different ways. This new moon isn't going to be bad or good for any specific sign. Don't let the pop astrologers bullshit you, because I'm sure they're going to be like, fixed signs, you're really in trouble. And, cardinals, you're going to be blah, blah, blah. And no, don't own that shit. That's the danger of pop astrology, pop psychology, all of the pop stuff. It's popular. It doesn't mean it's right. In fact, I can tell you, as a lifelong person who has managed to deal with not always being popular, popular doesn't mean it's right. It just means everybody is like, oh yeah, we like that. It's like, so it doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean they're good people. It doesn't even mean, like, people act like they're your friend and they don't even know you. Like, that's it. It's really funny. There's content creators out there in the metaphysical world who do it because they want to be known. They want to be famous. I couldn't have cared freaking less. In fact, I was like really convinced nobody was going to listen to me, because that had kind of been my experience previous. People would be like, I don't know, you're a little deep. It's not that deep, Laurie. I'm like, everything's that deep. I'm a Scorpio rising. Guys, people started listening. People were ready to hear what I had to say. But I didn't do it to be famous or to be known. The only reason I care about my numbers is I want to make sure as many people who could benefit from this knowledge, a lifetime of experience, a lifetime of healing life forward, a lifetime of building my life and my business brick by brick, that I can pass on that knowledge and share that knowledge. So even if you can't afford to get a reading with me, even if you can't afford to get a class with me, you're getting something beneficial out of what I do. That's the only reason I care. I could not care less. My intention has not been to be a household name. Could not care less. That's why for a while I put on makeup and I was like, people expect it. I put a little lippy on today. Yes, I'm moisturized. I'm almost 60. You got to moisturize, right? Everything I just talked about is about deconstruction and renovating. You got to boil it down into what actually matters. You know what matters in life? Having a place to live. Okay, that keeps you out of the elements. Having food that's nourishing, having clean air, and not having neurotoxins in it that drive you crazy and make you not be able to focus. Derp. That matters. Food, water, shelter. Having somebody pick you is not necessary. Having the big corporation decide you're worthy of their shitty wage is not the goal. Okay? And all of that is as artificial as that fresh air freshener was. I know, see, my focus is back because I won't let it go. With this new moon, I want you to dial it back to essentials. And I'm not saying get into austerity. I'm not saying don't enjoy your pleasures. I'm not saying don't enjoy your comforts. It's okay to want to be comfortable. That's part of being human. But the artificial attachment of your value to all of that, like if I don't have this, I'm not valuable. If I don't have the right foundation, if I don't, if I'm in my 50s and I have 11s, oh no, you spent a whole life thinking or squinting, trying to see, or both. If you are so attached to what other people think of you instead of what can I bring to the table, if you're so worried about how everything's impacting you to the point where you don't even bother to look at other people, because I see the selfishness every single day. I see the selfishness as much as I see the good in humanity every single day in my social media comments. What about me? What about my life? What about the people actually struggling and suffering? What about them? People in minority communities have been saying for years what's been going on. And I know I've pissed off a bunch of people who have the caucasity to suddenly become aware. We don't need to hear that from you, Laurie. You don't need to make us feel guilty. I don't know. Maybe I do. Maybe I do. Maybe I do need that because we have got to reform society. And if we don't take the action, you, me, my mom, my daughter, my niece, my nephew, my son, my friends, if we don't, they do. Stop idolizing celebrities, politicians, etc. Stop thinking they're morally superior because they're not. They're human. They poop too. This new moon is breaking through the veneer of a stable society. And we have to decide, how do I stabilize myself? Through my nervous system, through my environment, through the work I do in the world. Be willing to learn new things. If you just say, well, this is just my pattern, this is my habit, blah, 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 you're holding yourself back. And I don't have patience for that. I'm not going to pander to that. Well, I've always been this way. You don't have to be. And if you're going to use your astrology as an excuse, believe it or not, even though I'm a Scorpio rising, I can do small talk. I don't have to like it. But there are social situations where people don't need to hear the ins and outs of a deep metaphysical theory. There are times I need to say, oh my God, that's such a cute outfit. Because that's what the moment calls for. Don't use your astrology as an excuse. Don't. Because your astrology can be the solution too. Don't use it as fate or determinism. Use it as a way to move you forward because you can. Set your intentions for doing things differently over the next 5-6 months. And you will be amazed at the results that show up. Think differently. Let it blow through. Stop taking it all personal. Your brain doesn't know the difference. And I love social media. I think social media is a great tool for growth. And I think that's why the deviants that have owned things, like when Twitter got sold, and we've seen TikTok get sold, we've seen Instagram purchased by Meta, back in the day. All the people who own those are utilizing it in ways that cause harm, but you can break through that and use it in ways that defeats what they want. Not by telling it like it is, not being like, oh, this person sucks and that person sucks. Notice I'm not mentioning names. Y'all know who owns what. You don't need to take them on directly. You can spread the good news. You can use it as the way they're trying to disrupt it being used. The internet was actually designed to bring humanity together. It was not meant to tear it apart. And we can be mad at the people who own these things and create the algorithms, or we can exploit the algorithms. And this new moon helps us do that. Exploit the algorithm. Share something good. Make the content you want to see in the world. Stop being mad at the big content creators when you freaking follow them. Unfollow if you don't like what they're doing. Block them if you don't like what they're doing. And then make the things you want to see in the world. But if you're not getting traction on your videos, if you're not getting traction on your memes, if you're not getting traction on your posts, there's a reason for that. You're not following the things that get the algorithm using it. You have to leverage the algorithm, not fight it. Okay? You got to leverage it and not fight it. Don't be like, oh, I hate social media because it does a lot of harm. Use it for good. Use it for good. It's not going away. Hijack it. Hijack it. And don't just hijack it to spread rumors. I get so tired of seeing the same kind of stupid posts over and over. Did you know that Jeffrey Epstein did blah, blah, blah? Yeah, we did. We knew in the 90s. It's just, it was acceptable. We knew. Everybody knew. But there were good girls and good girls that weren't. There were throwaway kids. And that was the societal attitude. Anybody saying different is bullshitting you. You want to know why a lot of Gen Xers and some boomers that had kids later were helicopter parents? Because they knew what was going on in the world. They knew. They remembered the white creepy van. They remembered being solicited to run away. We remembered. And then we got told by the school system or people in our families that we were over-involved parents. But we're like, oh no, we know what's out in the world. So acting surprised, even though it's utterly disgusting, even though it's depraved, and I'm going to say it's not inhumane because human beings can be absolute beasts. It's not even demons. Don't buy into that. Human beings are really, really capable at being the biggest sinners and the biggest saints. We've got to shift our mindset to create a better society forward, one that does protect the vulnerable, one that does create better communications and doesn't just spread gossip. Oh, did you hear that so-and-so is getting a divorce? They cheated. Not your business. Not your marriage. Not your business. Not your business. Worry about your business. If everybody worried about their business, you could tell Saturn's in Aries. If everybody worried about their business, things would be fine. Speaking of Jeffrey Epstein, I was looking at his chart. I'll talk about that in the Patreon-only podcast. Oh, she's a tease. So you're probably wondering why I'm not emphasizing this new moon as an eclipse. And that's because it's kind of a weenie eclipse. It is an intense new moon, but it's not because it's an eclipse. It's a partial. Okay. It's not a big deal. And in fact, eclipses are only a big deal when they're visible in your location. Oh, I know. There's content creators who would disagree with me, but those are the same content creators that say that Mercury has a pre-shadow because there's no such thing. They haven't actually studied the information. All they've done is regurgitated information. There's a big difference. Eclipses are only eclipses when they are visible in your location. I am not borrowing from astronomy. You have to remember that astrology and astronomy were the very same subject, absolutely the same subject, until the 18th century, when the Age of Reason separated the arts and sciences, which I think was actually, it was a useful thought process, but it was actually really stupid at the end of the day. So this isn't that big of a deal. Where it's a big deal is where it's visible, which is most of Antarctica. And melting sea ice impacts us all. But that's what it is. It's I don't even necessarily see a whole lot of leadership changing unless you're in South Africa, Tanzania. Sorry, I always say it wrong. Tanzania, Madagascar. I think Madagascar will see some political upheaval. Maybe even in the Seychelles. Okay. But it's not visible anywhere else. That's it. It's a eensy teensy weeny little visual thing. I think we could see melting sea ice much more rapidly than expected. I think we could see chunks of ice disconnect. I think there could be there's been earthquakes like around a 5.5, that strength around Antarctica offshore. I think we could see a sizable wind that will knock off a good chunk of ice. That impacts us all, but indirectly, not necessarily directly in the moment. And that's why in this episode, I'm focusing on how you use this energy. We all need to be very adaptable. We all need to be able to pivot. We all need to let go of what we think is supposed to be and what we should be doing, and really look at where we can align who we are, our strengths, our gifts, our talents, and abilities into moving forward. So, what about world leaders? How does this impact them? It doesn't really, except in they're going to have to be dealing with the actual elephant in the room, which is climate change. I don't think any great hopes out of the current administration in the United States because they're so anti-science. I don't think it's that they don't agree with science. I don't think that's it. I think the people making the decisions very much know what the science actually is, and it's actually darker than that. But I'm not really going to go into that, my theories too much, because they're pretty dark. I hold no leader in high esteem. None. Even the ones that come off really nice, even the ones that clean up real good, even the ones that don't have obvious disgusting habits and lie through their teeth, even the ones that appear to be really good, I don't hold them in high esteem. I just don't. Because the amount of compromise you have to do to stay functioning and not get yourself offed is a lot. You know, and there is a lot of self-preservation that goes into being in a position like that. And I'm not judging. I'm just saying. And with that, I don't necessarily trust it. Just because you're doing what you got to do doesn't mean I got to trust you. So there's that. You can like people or dislike them all you want. They're still going to be doing a job. Period. So for you really want to listen to the end of the podcast because I'm walking through how to hold the energy to set really clear intentions. It's so important to understand your actual power. There are things that are outside of our control. There always will be things outside of our control. However, we can control us. We can control our immediate environment. We can work with what's going on. The constant lamenting and woe is me is in your way of enjoying your life. You know, even with egregious things going on, it doesn't make you a bad person for having a reasonably good day. Even with climate change causing very big disruptions to things like water tables, you can still adapt and work through that. Remember, pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. And if you don't believe me, believe the Buddha. And that's how I end the podcast today. That's how I'm going to end this segment. I want you to understand, I don't care what other content creators are saying about the so-called eclipse. It has to be visible where you're at. Now, I have a global audience. If that eclipse is visible where you are in South Africa, in Southeast Africa, over into through the Indian Oceans, and that's going to include Reunion, Seychelles, and Seychelles a little bit, like the lower islands. I don't think even Mahe is going to be able to see it, guys. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. I know some of you are tuning in. Comment ça va? Que pour faire là? But anyway, in Madagascar, same. Okay, so Madagascar, it's visible. Watch the weather and watch out for political unrest because there may be shifts in the political landscape there. But everywhere else, it's a new moon. It's a new moon on steroids. It's going to pump you up. It's pretty wild. But anyway, do your best to stay as clear as possible mentally to reduce the external noise and use my intention setting guide. You know, ask yourself some really powerful questions about your strengths, about what you can contribute, not just to make your own life better, but to ameliorate the experience of other people around you. We'll move on to the next segment. Shoutouts, and then we will talk a little bit more about how intention setting drives us forward into the future.
I don't think it's it this month, but you can start getting your hopes up.
All right, patrons, it's time for your shout out. Without the community at the Awake Space, there is no podcast. I do not take corporate sponsorships. I do not allow ad placements because I don't get to guarantee the quality. And for me, it's all about remaining independent and bringing you content that I know is useful and applicable every single week, rain or shine, sick or not. So every single week, I read out the newest members of the Awake Space community. You could check out how to join through the link in the show notes. We're going to say welcome to, we've got Amethyst, Lindsay, Annie, Asena, Nicole, Venusian Blind, who actually has a stronger glasses prescription than I do, I found out. But yay for correction. Susan, Rebecca, J. Renee, Carol, Chelsea, Larak 2, Amelia, SSS 333, Emma Barbie, G, Jamie, Samantha, Jennifer, Sarah, Mel, April, Chocolate Chip, Sarah, Elizabeth, Candace, Beth S, Heather, Raquel, Denise, Stephanie, Jay, Goodwitch 73, Noe Jose, Megan, Melly, Katie, Macy, Jess, Pedro, Cassie, Danelle, October, Maggie, Brittany, Denise, Mel, Spooky Latte, Amanda, Clint, Alina, Vanessa, Marcella, let me know which way. Hope, Laura Beth, Brandy, May, Linda the Good Witch, Claudia, Lore Master 3000, Vermicelli Magnifico, Margaret, Stacy K, S, Nat, Mudong Jen, and Jacqueline. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the community. Thank you for coming back. For those of you I recognize, thank you for coming in. If you're new, without you, there is no podcast. My eternal gratitude is to you. And some exciting news. And I know like patrons will listen to this if you aren't listening to this because you don't want to listen to the, like, it's promotion. No, it's not. It's thanking people for being supportive. But anyway, class is coming soon. Astrology class is coming soon. We're going to do some synastry, which is compatibility. Thanks to my daughter. She was like, is there a way to torture men with astrology? And I was like, well, I might not teach it that way, but we can teach compatibility. And I was thinking about it. And I was like, I need to do some lectures on neurodiversity in the astrology chart and how to be supportive of people, not only in identifying and doing so ethically, but also how to support people and their own energetical makeup. So I'm excited that I'm going to be teaching those soon. Don't ask me for dates yet. Just getting around to it. Remember, I was poisoning myself, so we're getting the brain back. Choop, choop. Alrighty. Let's talk about setting intentions in a way that actually opens the road and helps you build forward.
I don't think it's it this month, but you can start getting your hopes up.
So I've had a lot of trouble, even though all the music is licensed. And somebody reached out who's an independent music writer, composer. God, see, my brain is still coming back online. I will get back to you. I did get your message. But I've had some problems with the licensing on YouTube. I don't know what the deal is. And it's hard to fix. And I don't have anybody on my team who's able to fix that for me. I have a really, really small team. And they do what they do well. But nobody is doing the tech for me right yet. Soon, but not yet. And I do the recording, I do the editing, except for my wonderful editor who does the social media clips for me, saving me much time and energy. But it's pretty much me, myself, and I when it comes to all of the production from the writing, etc. I have a wonderful editor, Jessica. Jessica, I'll get Living by Luna done really soon. But anyway, So that little soundbite in between the segments is I caught myself recording the sound from TikTok that I made that said, "I don't think it's it this month, but you can get your hopes up." That's intentional, okay? Subliminal programming. Donald Trump does not have a great February physically. His physicality has been under great amount of pressure, and it will continue to be under a great amount of pressure. He is going to start losing allies pretty soon. They may end up dropping like flies. There may be accidents or illnesses or, oh, they fell down the stairs. As for him, I'm going to say right now, anybody who says they can predict a death using somebody's personal astrology chart, if they get it, they're lucky because death doesn't often show up in someone's astrology chart because death is usually a non-event to the person who keels over. It just isn't. Okay, because consciousness continues, but it continues differently when we're not in a physical body anymore. But I can say, with all the experience I've got and my whole chest thrown out, his physicality is under a great amount of strain. He's already displaying evidence, obviously, of cognitive decline, if not strokes, TIAs, etc. His speech is degrading, his inability to hold focus, etc. Saturn is now moving into a square with his Mercury. That ain't helping him out. If he is still functioning by the end of the year, you're going to see it just beyond drooling in a cup. We know he's drooling in a cup already. But his physicality is very, very diminished and impacted. There's a lot of stress on his physical body right now. And we may see an incident. If he ducks out of view for a week or two, know that he's getting medical treatments. His whole physicality is under an immense amount of pressure from this new moon in through the end of the month. In fact, February 21st through the 23rd, if he doesn't have an accident, a stumble, a public event, if his competency isn't utterly called into question, I know we've been calling it into question, but from official channels, I will be very surprised. And I mean it, his allies are not all going to be propping him up. We could see betrayals of his ilk, and that could come from the Republican Party. The Republicans may be in trouble in the Congress, so we may see another resignation, if not two. So it's not a great month for Donald Trump. Yay. Should we put all of our hearts into that, and make that the basis of our well-being? I don't think so. Because he's not the biggest problem. He's a puppet. Like somebody's hand is literally up the diaper animating him. Okay, he is not making the decisions. I will say Bondi's not making the decisions. I don't think Patel is making the decisions. I think there's people beyond that. And honestly, I don't even think Peter Thiel is because he doesn't seem to be able to rub two brain cells together right now. So there's money interest behind all of this. And by the way, there's nothing you and I can do about that. So what can we do things about? And that's where we get into setting our intentions. Okay? Intentions have to be set for things that deal with us individually. I know I say, hey, you got to think about other people, right? You got to think about your community, your neighborhood, things like that. But there's still things within that you can't control. There's what you can do and then everything else. When you're setting intentions, you want to be in as clear space as possible. If you're sitting down to write intentions when you're in a shitty mood, it's probably not the right time. Okay. If you're trying to write them from a place of lack, it's probably not the right time. Nothing ever goes my way. Universe, I need you to throw me a bone. Probably not a good intention. In fact, from personal experience, I can say asking the universe to throw you a bone is probably a bad idea. I'll tell the story later. Setting your intentions means I intend to X, Y, and Z. I intend to open my mind to greater possibilities. I intend to witness and understand the signs my guidance is giving me. I intend to work on my project in a step-by-step way. I intend to study that which I do not understand to make that happen. So if you're just, a lot of times people will write the book, create the class, and think build it and they will come. Guess what? Never. Never. Only in the field of dreams did building it and they will come actually happen. Okay. What you do is you set a clear destination. You set a clear destination. In fact, I found, this is so relevant, I was going through files to put up in the ANI library for the members of the test lab. And I was looking for downloads. I was looking for like worksheets and things like that. And I saw a file from 2013, which is where that journey actually started. I thought, maybe that's a file I can put in. And it was called My Master Plan. From 2013, I opened it up. No, it wasn't. It wasn't a document to share. It was my master plan. I had written that, my master plan, back in 2013, 13 years ago. And I had written very, very clearly a 10-year plan. This is what I wanted to be doing. This was what was important to me. This is what motivated me. By the way, guess what it was? Entertain. I like to entertain. I do. And I like to teach. And I can teach anything I know. It doesn't matter. You want to learn how to make French toast? I'm your girl. I'll teach you how. You want to learn astrology? I got you. Okay. You want to learn how to hand spin or crochet? I'm your girl. I'll teach you anything I know. You want to know about parenting? I was a parenting instructor for 14 years, not because I was the best parent, but because I always wanted to be better. That's the thing about a teacher. Anyway, I looked through that. I not only reached my little goals, I reached my big goals in the time I had written it. I had set a 10-year period. The only things I didn't achieve were things that were unaligned. And some of those had to do with my marriage, which I left just 3 years after I wrote the document. And funny enough, then I exceeded all the other things. I'm not saying all marriages are bad. That just wasn't a supportive one. Okay. Don't feel bad for me. It served a purpose. But anyway, makes sense. When you're very, very crystal clear about what it is you want to do. So I wanted to teach. I wanted to travel. I wanted to have fun doing it. Okay. Because I can be very serious, but I can be funny sometimes. And I like to be funny and I like to have fun. My idea of fun is not always the same as everybody else's. I'm not one for a loud party or loud music or lots of booze or none of that's interesting to me. My idea of fun is doing this, is being able to communicate to you and hear back from you. I love teaching live courses. That's why we're going to add some in like the late spring, early summer. Yeah, going to do a road trip. But seeing the clarity that I had in 2013, even though I had no clue of how I was going to make any of that happen. I didn't have any connections. I was under-resourced. Trust me, every time I made money, either the kids needed something, you'll resonate with this. Either the kids needed something like new shoes or a class or a uniform or art supplies, whatever it was. Or they broke their phone. If you're raising kids, you know what I'm talking about. And my then spouse would also, anytime if he knew I had made any kind of profit at all, would find ways to spend it instead of me being able to put it back into my business. Because my model has always been that my business pays for my business and I invest the profit back into the business, kind of like a not for profit. And that's how I grew without outside funding. It's a great model. If you have the ability to kind of hold on, if you need money fast, it's not always the best way to grow, but it's a really good way to build a stable business. But anyway, so it's that kind of clarity when you're setting intentions. You don't want to hedge your bets. It's not about getting it right. It's about getting it authentic. What makes you happy? So when you're before you even set down what you want to do, what makes you happy? Like truly happy? Do you know? Because at a certain time, if you ask me to follow my joy or what made me happy, I'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. And that's why I'll say, where's the reasonable contentment? You know, for me, on a cold winter's day with a nice fire going, having a cup of cocoa or coffee or a hot toddy, and sitting with people I care about and telling stories or listening to their stories. That's cozy. Okay. Sitting with my daughter, doing strategy sessions. She's my strategist and she does amazing. Wouldn't be here without her. Us reminiscing about how we got here. That's my happy place. Watching her grow as a human being. That's my happy place. Watching my clients grow. That's my happy place. Watching people go from strength to strength in their careers, in their relationships, in their lives, becoming more and more of who they came here to be. That's my happy place. What's your happy place? What gives you a sense of reasonable contentment? Not peak experience, just reasonable on a day to day. If I could feel like this every single day, what represents that to you? So come from that space when you're setting intentions because it puts you in a more receptive space. Okay. Now with this new moon in Aquarius, it's societal shifts. So if society is shifting, how do I see my role? How do I see my role? You may not know yet. Your intention could be that your role becomes clear, right? That maybe you set the intention that I will be receptive to hearing what people want from me, right? There's a great book called How the World Sees You. I share it with clients. In fact, it came out in 2013, I think. It's by Sally Hogshead. I know she has a silly name, but she's absolutely brilliant. And when I first found that book, How the World Sees You, and I started reading it, I went, oh my God, this is the best non-astrological book on the topic of the 10th house. Because the 10th house is how the world sees us. It's our reputation, right? It's where people see our value. And what we think is valuable about us isn't necessarily what other people want from us. It's part of the package, but they may see something else. And that book is very good at describing it. So if you can get a copy of How the World Sees You by Sally Hogshead, I'm not affiliated. I just really love her work. I've been thinking about maybe getting her on the show because I was like, oh, she has such cool information. I'd be like, hey, I recommend your book all the time. If anybody knows her, tell her to reach out to me. Because I think she's so cool. But anywho, when you're setting those intentions for yourself, it's not about magic in the wave of magic wand and it suddenly appears 2 weeks later. It's about watching the progressive growth. Sometimes you don't see that it actually is a straight line. It's not as foggy and weird in retrospect as it is going through it. You can set your intentions for crafting authentic stability and sustainability. That's really important going forward. What does that actually look like? What actually matters to you? You know, for some people, it really is going to concerts. For other people, it's creating art. For other people, it's building frameworks and businesses because they enjoy it. It's not about the money. It's about the challenge. Okay. For some people, it is about financial security. And honestly, if you're not financially secure, life is very, very difficult. I've been there a couple of times. And there's no virtue in struggle. There's not. It teaches you a lot, but I don't think we need to do it to have empathy. I really don't. It's important to set intentions as you're looking to grow forward. What are the skills you need to be? What do you already have? It's like, what do you already know knowledge wise? What do you already have supply wise, equipment wise, tech wise? This is part of the ANI process, by the way. Right. The ANI process is basically one giant intention engine that helps you then apply it in aligned action. All right. In case people were wondering. And it used to stand for Aligned Network International because I really wanted to build out this really big organization that was global. I have really big ideas, if you hadn't noticed. But I was under-resourced, and even now, I don't have the time to build that out the way I want to build it out. So we're going to say it's Aligned Naturally and Integrate. ANI, great acronym. We can use it in a lot of ways. When you're setting your intentions, it's not about being realistic entirely, because a lot of times realism is seeded with pessimism. Like, what could I realistically achieve? When I wrote out my financial goals, where I wanted to be in 10 years, I could not conceive of what I wrote. And I achieved that before 2023. In fact, as I was reading, I teared up and I was like, oh, honey, if you only knew. If you only knew what you were capable of doing back then. But I wrote those with the mindset of someone who was still raising teenagers, right? Well, one was a teenager, one was grown. Still having all the financial pressure of the family and in an unsupportive marriage. It still happened. It's just things had to change to make it happen. If you think you're going to grow and there's not going to be any changes around you and you're busy judging yourself while you're growing, you get in your way. And you can make it really painful for yourself and other people while you try to hold on to the status quo and you're trying to build forward. Okay? And I don't know any solutions around that because, you know, good people do have concerns about other people's well-being. I remember having this moment of panic back in 2016, driving down the coast, the West Coast, heading to Southern California, and I was up around the Redwoods, which is always a phenomenal space to be, with intoxicating oxygen, thinking about what I wanted to accomplish, and then remembering that I had literally upset the apple cart for everybody I cared about. But the compromise I had made was killing me, literally killing me. If you compromise to your own detriment, not compromising to build a understood collective future, but if the compromise you're making is diminishing your very vitality, it is not aligned. And when you undo that, you can feel guilty about it. And that's okay. Trust me, it worked out better for everybody. It really did. But in that moment, going, oh crap, what'd I do? Did I just do that? But it was essential to growing forward. There's a lot similar in the energy right now with this new moon in a square with Uranus. It's destabilizing because we are looking at systems that are not aligned or sustainable for humanity. And Aquarius represents humanity. We are all human. We are flawed. We are flawed. We are all human, and I'm not making excuses for egregious behavior because human beings can be very egregious in their behavior. Heinous things can happen by human beings who are aligned with a consciousness that does not serve the greater good, that does not serve the greater whole of who we are. when it's overly self-interested, when it's depraved. Because human beings go there. They don't need demons. We have, if we only realize how strong our thoughts are, that we have crafted everything we think is divine or malefic, we've created that. That's how strong we are. You want to defeat those demons? Find your strength. I think I'll end the podcast with that. Years ago, before 2016, I was having a very odd metaphysical experience. In fact, I had to call a friend who's in England, and I gave him a call, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. There's something really weird. This energy is very strange. And I was scared. I'd faced plenty, both metaphysically as well as physically in life. And when I can't handle something on my own, it feels a little odd, because you're right, she is a badass. But I called another badass, and that badass said, you have another name. Use it. It's that name. I was like, another name? I was like, my middle name? Laurie Alice? And she's like, no. It's a name, another name. And it finally dawned on me, because I was in the middle of it. And it was wild and crazy. And I'm not going to go into the depths. Maybe in Patreon I'll tell the story. It was wild. And then I remember when I embraced Islam back in 1990, I had chosen the name Janan. And Janan means the place in heaven where God lives. It's like a special place in the garden. And I translate it into English. I am the place in heaven where God lives. God lives in me. And all of a sudden, this dramatic burst of energy, everything shifted. That's not because I'm special. If each one of us, in fact, set your intention this way, you are the center of creation. You are that connected to God, the goddess, the universe, the atomic center. You are that precious. If you can operate from that space, amazing magic happens in your life. You align more fully into who you are. Each one of us is that seat of power. Each one of us is that connected to the all that is. Each one of us has that inner divinity. And wouldn't you know it, the people who want to stay in control and dominance would very much like us to forget it. So remember it. Because as you remember that, as you write your intentions, you will be able to measure your growth step by step. It's not about becoming a gajillionaire. It's about becoming more aligned with the experience you came here to have, and that was not to live within suffering. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. And if you don't believe me, know that that was what the Buddha said. All right, my friends, much love. Have a really great week. I'm interested to hear how your new moon goes. So let me know. That new moon happens in the evening of the 17th. So it is not the new moon until it's the new moon. Set those intentions. You can start at night around like 7 p.m. Pacific, but you can even write them into Wednesday. But let me know how it goes. Let me know how that new moon works for you.